Welcome everybody to the ETOA webinar for VIVA, and this is about sourcing sustainable product. My name's Tim Fairhurst, and I'm very pleased that today we're joined by Virginia from BioScore and Xavier from University of Surrey. And it's really their presentations that you're here for, so there's going to be some introductory words from me about what we're doing in this space and how we think this topic should be addressed. And then Virginia, followed by Xavier, will speak, and if we've time, there'll be a little bit of discussion afterwards. So thanks very much for joining us. I hope you find the presentations interesting. So why are we having this discussion? Well, one of the things that we're focused on is supporting SMEs throughout the tourism ecosystem in Europe, also the buyers who may be anywhere in the world who are looking for sustainable product. So that's the private sector piece, but there is clearly a big destination focus piece as well. So how are destinations supporting a transition to more sustainable practice? There's a lot of rhetoric. Today we're getting into the reality, the tools, the metrics, the processes people are using in order to monitor progress and to enable SMEs to embed, implement, and just incorporate into their daily management sustainability tools. We'll be focusing on climate to some extent, but it's broad spectrum sustainability that is catching the attention at the moment. That's the one with the number on it that's easiest to catch. But one of the things you'll find in the presentations is how we're approaching other aspects of sustainability in order to support decision making, either in terms of where you put your promotional spend, or if you're the private sector looking to source product, what's the important factor for you? Is it social impact? Is it climate? Is it both? And how do the relative importance of these factors affect decision-making, and how do they affect the design of decision-making support tools? Those are the sorts of things we'll explore today. A couple of observations from me from the point of view of a trade association, and some of this is a bit counterintuitive from the private sector. That's that we probably need the framework to change faster than it seems to be, because the space to do the wrong thing remains big. And one of the risks to change is you vacate what is a commercially fertile area. It might be a short-term area to be in, but if people can still make money somewhere, there is a very strong commercial incentive to do so. So we need to de-risk transition, and partly that is to do with regulatory change, but we also need to make it easier to move. So it's not just about coercion, it is about support and tools. Now, the private sector traditionally would say we're a very consumer-led business. This is about discretionary spend. It's about the annual decision of where to go on holiday. We're led by our clients. Now, this is probably one area where we, as an industry, need to be in front of the consumer, because at best, the evidence is mixed that sustainability is near the top of the list, let alone top of the list, when people are making decisions about where to go on holiday. It's certainly growing. Flight-free holidays are a growth sector within the European ecosystem, but for long-haul tourism, unavoidably, you're aviation dependent. So therefore, you're very interested in mitigating what you can in the land-based ecosystem, knowing that there's a relatively high carbon cost of acquisition for people who come from long-haul markets, who overall may be considered valuable because of their seasonal patterns of travel, also the amount of money they spend per day. So it's all part of the mix. But we need to move faster than the consumer because it's urgent. We've got to hit, in European sense, 55% less than 1990 levels by 2030, and we're over halfway from the Paris Accords, which mapped out progress from 2015 to 2030. So there's some urgency. We need to get going as an industry. Even though regulation would be helpful, it won't come fast enough, neither will consumer demand. The other big issue to mention, which the speakers will touch on, is complexity and compliance. In Europe, there are over 200 certification and accreditation systems. That can look intimidating from the outside. You need some expert help. And one of the benefits of our experts today is that they will show that it doesn't need to be that hard. You don't need to feel intimidated by the complexity of the options out there. There's plenty of people who are available to help navigate that system for you. But reporting requirements are coming. So sooner or later, if you haven't yet started reporting in a way that is subject to external scrutiny, sooner or later you'll have to. That just seems likely from a regulatory perspective. And it's certainly true that any claims you're making, particularly with respect to your environmental performance, they will increasingly be subject to external rigor. And the Green Claims Directive from the EU perspective will require people to examine what claims they're making as to environmental impact and have those verified and audited before publishing them, is the current proposal, which is really a very high barrier to entry. So exactly how this is going to work in practice is highly topical. Last point, before I invite Virginia to really get into a practical example of how these tools work, is what's needed are more tools and training to help people adopt all the new systems that are available. They need to be simple. This has got to work for a big multinational company, but it's also got to work for a small independent hotelier where everyone's doing about 4 different jobs. So we're very interested to hear from Virginia how the overall variety of the ecosystem can get on board with the transition to more sustainable practice. So with that thought, so industry needs to move faster. It's complicated, but there is help available. I'm very pleased to invite Virginia to explain what's been going on in Valencia and how BioScore have been helping make that happen. Virginia, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you for your kindness inviting us to this webinar. I think I'm going to share with you my presentation. I don't know if you are seeing properly right now.
We can see that fine, Virginia. Thank you.
Sorry?
We can see your presentation. That looks great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Greetings to you all from Valencia, Alicante. From Alicante, Spain, sorry. I'm Virginia Sarobe, Chief Sustainability Officer in BioScore Sustainability, and I will do my best to explain to you how we support OSBEX and its associates in their path toward being sustainable accommodations thanks to ESG strategies, and how BioScore Sustainability helps OSBEX to do so as part of our partnership. First of all, I'm going to introduce you to OSBEC. OSBEC is the Hotel and Tourism Business Association of the region of Valencia that brings together companies involved in hospitality, accommodation, restaurants, leisure, which are located or carry out their main activity in region of Valencia. OSBEC was founded in 1970 in the city of Benidorm and has grown to become one of the main tourism associations in Spain, with 4 offices in Benidorm, Alicante, Valencia, and Castellón, the main cities in region of Valencia. The 332 current associates, mainly hotels and other types of accommodations, represents 100,000 beds in market. OSBEC supports their associates in several areas, such as marketing and communication, general services, health and safety, quality and projects, big data and analytics, training, and also in sustainability management, in which we are focused today. And about BioScore, on the other hand, we are a platform specialized in sustainable tourism, dedicated to certification and consulting services through our own simple and secure management software. We promote sustainability practices and offer travelers the option to choose environmentally responsible establishments. Since 2020, we have already rated more than 36,000 accommodations with our own sustainability rating system. We have also certified more than 700 accommodations with Bioscore certification, which is our own standard based in ASJ criteria aligned with the Global Sustainability Tourism Council and also with Global Reporting Initiative. And Bioscore certification is recognized with the Travel Sustainable Level 3+ on Booking.com. With Bioscore platform, the accommodations can get their sustainability certification, can calculate the carbon footprints, calculate water footprint, monitor energy consumptions, prepare sustainability reports, monitor sustainability KPIs, and among other things. And together with Osbeck, we collaborate to assist hotels and destinations in prioritizing sustainability management and making more informed decisions. We focus on intelligent data management to evaluate sustainability levels in destinations and generate big data through a sustainability certification process for all the accommodations. The rating platform ensures secure and accurate data collection in a digital environment. We said before that Osbeck has 332 associates. Currently, around 100 of them are working with our platform, being certificated with Bioscore certification, 67 accommodations. The average grade of accommodations is a B seal. That means that they meet 63% of the certification criteria. We have different levels, C, B, A, and A+, starting with 50% achievement, which is the minimum required for certification. So we use this all big data gathered from the vast amount of information stored in our platform to provide Osbeck with a KPI management system so that they can monitor sustainable performance level of the associates. Osbeck set the KPIs which they think add more value to the sustainable performance analysis of their associates from an ESG approach. Thus, we monitor 52 KPIs from 6 different areas, which are emissions, energy, waste, water, food and beverage management, and corporate social responsibility. And we can see KPIs like number of accommodations calculating carbon footprint, number of accommodations reporting sustainability, monitoring food waste, controlling energy consumption. After establishing the KPI, we design a dashboard so Osbeck can analyze the information quickly and easily whenever necessary. We know all that we appreciate useful tools that add value, but in a simple way. The use of the platform is very intuitive, and the data is presented in a visual way, so you can obtain a lot of information in a simple glance. Here you have some pictures about the Osbeck dashboard. In the first one, you can see the accommodations performance by area represented in Danube charts in the different sections, emissions, energy, water, etc. In the second one, you can see a line graph with the sustainability rate of accommodations. You can also see a green arrow pointed to a press button in which it says See Hotels List. And if you click there, you can see the detailed information about the hotel rating shown in the picture below. These are just a couple of examples to show you how the dashboard looks like. Finally, Bioscore prepares quarterly reports for Osbeck, monitoring KPIs to outline a sustainability profile of the associates with all this information. If I may, I would add that as a tourism professional for over 20 years, I completely agree with the framework previously presented by Tim, and also would like to encourage the industry represented here to commit to a sustainability management from an innovative and digital approach to achieve the common sustainability development goals that should inspire of all of us. So that's everything that's all from Bioscore. Thank you very much for your attention. Tim?
Virginia, thank you so much. If I can invite you to stop sharing your screen.
Yes, of
I'll make
course.
a couple of remarks and then it'll be over to Xavier. So thank you. I think that's really just shown in a very practical sense. I mean, there's some big numbers there. That's over 36,000 properties assessed and over 700 certified. That's a very big data set. And I'm sure from an academic perspective, Xavier's be sort of interested in that amount of data over that period of time. I think from a private sector perspective, I suppose maybe we can talk about this later. I'm curious to know whether the hotels in the network are reporting any market response, so that if they are certified, then that suddenly sort of putting them on the, as it were, the approved list for the operators who are looking to source sustainable product. You know, what's the value add of getting certification for them from a commercial perspective? Because fundamentally, this isn't going to work unless there are market-based mechanisms which reward change. And that's really the key to this, is designing things which, you know, the interests of climate and competition converge. And I think that's the ideal, and maybe I'm being a bit idealistic framing it that way, but it also seems pragmatic. We're going to encourage people to move if there's an economic incentive to do so, as well as having half an eye on the changing regulatory environment. Xavier, I know you've been doing a lot of work which is focused on tools that support decision making. So do you want to give us a sense of, you know, who's interested in this? What actors are commissioning you to do this sort of work, and what sorts of outcomes are you driving to, and what's the shape of the tools that you're providing, and what can they do? Over to you.
Thanks, Tim. There are two ways of looking at this. I understand where you're coming from with, you know, we need a market incentive. And I think organizations so far have looked at sustainability as a way of reducing operating costs through a good management of their energy, water, waste, and typically very little less, if we're brutally honest. So nobody is going to favor a hotel because that hotel is reducing its operating costs. Don't expect me to be willing to pay more for a hotel that actually works more efficiently. The efficiency is in itself its reward. Customers will start rewarding you the moment you provide sustainable experiences that are customer-centric. And we don't talk about this. And for yourselves as an ETOA, you know, the key is there. Produce the financial savings through eco-efficiencies and ring-fence the money you've saved to experiment with designing new products and experiences that will happen to have sustainability at the core, that will provide an experiential value to the customers. The idea that we need to choose between price, quality, convenience, risk, novelty, and sustainability is a joke, right? We should never promote sustainability at the expense of quality, price, location, convenience. We need to look at how sustainability helps you to promote those instead. And I think that is one of the many reasons why we've been getting it so wrong and we had so little traction so far. But moving on to something else, well, I wanted to now share with you some of the work I've been doing with one of the tourist destinations that I love collaborating with, you know, Andalusia in the south of Spain. And my co-author for the research work that we're doing here is Ana Torres Delgado from University of Barcelona, as well as, of course, Inma Gallego from Turismo de Andalucía. We start from the point that although we have many European national and regional tourist boards that are coming up with new ways of improving their national tourism plan and regional tourism strategies. If you look at the stats here between 2020 and 2023, yes, we do have a lot of plans. Sustainability happens to be mentioned. Everybody says they love sustainability. And then look at it. Climate change mentioned by less than 50%. Carbon emissions also not mentioned. Recognition that we need to reduce emissions. It is there in half the cases. But when it comes to actually having specific strategies and plans on how we're going to do it, we're not doing it. And it looks to me like the Ministries of Environment have committed to a certain number of things on behalf of all of the European citizens, but the tourist boards don't seem to be interested or able to listen to what's happening there because it's a little bit painful. So we've come up with the first very, very simple tool that everybody can use. If your region, if your business has data that says, where are my customers coming from? How much do they spend? How long do they stay here? And what's their method of transport? You can come up with this graph, and I can share an Excel spreadsheet free of charge that you can use to do this. And a number of regional tourist boards and some national tourist boards are doing it with us, and I'm helping them, to interpret the data. The graph you got here is for, it's either the whole of Spain or Barcelona. It's a Spanish tourist destination because you can see that the largest market here is the Spanish market on the bottom left-hand side. And you can see that on the vertical, we have the data we normally like to look at, total expenditure per person for a holiday. We could have also done it for expenditure per person per day, okay? And on the horizontal, we've got what's new, which is the carbon footprint. And you can see that if you only looked at the vertical, certain markets like Middle East, Asia will look really attractive. But the moment that then we consider what's the cost benefit, right? How do we look at how much carbon are we responsible for in order to achieve this income? Things look rather different from now on. So with a graph like this, a tourist board, but also an individual business has to consider, do I manage to make the same income for my business or for my destination with targeting markets that can be closer to home? Do I find a way of increasing the length of stay so with very similar carbon we'll have higher expenditure? Or do we optimize methods of transport, for example? And the reason I'm saying this is because more than 90% of the carbon footprint, particularly the areas where it's easiest for us to make changes, are the result of the distance traveled by markets. So if you're a tourist destination that's really far away from your source markets, honestly, trying to do something with your hotels is pointless because you could put a lot of effort and the return on investment in terms of reduction of carbon footprint will be minimal compared to trying to find more local markets because the majority of the carbon footprint is linked to that transport. Now, I know that listening to some of these things is painful and we need to think about how do we move forward. And also when I've talked to some destinations, they've said to us, well, we don't only take decisions about the markets that we're going to consider based on the amount of money that they spend. There are other criteria. So this is where with Turismo de Andalucía, we came up with a new way of considering segmentation decisions based on more criteria than just the two that I mentioned in the previous slide. Now, the previous slide is very easy to come up with that data. The data I'm proposing here takes a bit more effort, okay? And only tourist boards that are prepared to actually go deeper will want to do this. But the first set of criteria, the benefits that you will get from market segmentation, you've already considered, right? So looking at whether your destination has a high market share for that particular market, looking at whether that particular market is recovering quickly from the pre-COVID-19 numbers or whether it's a market that is quite sluggish, looking at whether that particular market is very good at coming off season or whether it's very highly concentrated in the high season where it may be easier to have alternative markets to fill in that same occupancy. Looking at length of stay, again, it's because we know that with increased length of stay, you're more likely to geographically disperse, you're more likely to spend money on a broader range of businesses, whereas when you have a short length of stay, you're more likely to go to the honeypot and to create that very unpleasant sense of over-tourism. Obviously, expenditure, we talked about it, and then connectivity. We want to market to those markets where we have the best transport connectivity because the return on investment on our marketing effort is likely to be rewarded. Equally, we can no longer ignore the carbon footprint. And this is just one of the many costs that we pay as a destination. We could talk about social costs as well. But 3 criteria we've included in here include markets that have a low carbon footprint per person per night, looking at ratios, markets that have a low carbon footprint for the entire trip, and markets that have a high expenditure per unit of carbon. So you can see there are 3 different ways of essentially coming up with a very similar result. But the point here is considering what those numbers will look like. Now, I'm not expecting you to learn what you've got here. You can screenshot it and then you can look at it in more detail. This is specifically again for Andalusia. What we found was that for each one of our key 15 international markets, as well as the Spanish domestic market or the regional market from within Andalusia, there are different reasons for and against targeting each one of those markets. So you can see that some of the more local markets do very well on carbon footprint, but actually surprisingly don't do so well on seasonality. They're markets that from a dynamism point of view, they're recovered fast, but they're problematic for length of stay because they tend to do short trips and their expenditure is low. At the very other end, we've got the US market, fantastic on seasonality. Obviously, we're not leaders in that market because there are many other people that compete with that market. But they're good on seasonality, they're good at expenditure, they're really not good on carbon footprint compared to the other markets that we have on the table. And the key here is you cannot take decisions on market segmentation based on one single variable, right? And I accept that also for carbon data. You cannot just use carbon data as the only variable to take market segmentation decisions. But equally, you can no longer ignore carbon segment data as part of your segmentation decisions. What we noticed here was that if we included or excluded carbon data, there were some changes in which could be the priority markets for us. But those were not as radical as you may have thought in the first place. Okay? So clearly, without carbon footprint, we had Finland, Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Belgium, and so on as our priorities. Whereas some of our more domestic markets were lower down. And then we found that the moment we included carbon data, Andalusia then came top. We need to do more marketing for our regional markets. This is something we all seem to remember during COVID. During COVID, we realized that locals actually spend money, and we started talking to them again. But for a long time, it felt like we'd ignored them because they're local, they'll come anyway. They know what they can find around here. But you can see that some of the markets, like Netherlands, for example, they still stayed in second position, irrespective of whether we include or excluded carbon data. Belgium was not that different. Ireland was not that different. Okay, so the point that we're trying to make in here is you need to consider carbon data now. There are new tools that you can use for doing that. And we invite any destination as well as businesses to consider what the implications of including carbon data are going to be for your segmentation decisions.
Thank you very much, Xavier. And Virginia, do turn your camera on. I think we might have just a couple of minutes left to reflect on what we've heard. And I think, Xavier, you said before you started your presentation, you know, we have been getting it wrong in the sense that, you know, there's been a lot of frustration, and we pick it up as a trade association that there was lots of expectation that with all the learnings of the value of tourism during the pandemic, because we missed it, but you know, how would we want it to come back in a different sort of way? Thinking of another destination, you know, that we do a lot of work with in Italy. So take the US market to Italy in 2023, it was probably more than 10% higher than it was in 2019. So in old-fashioned terms, that's a very big success. And as you've pointed out, US market is quite high spending, and it's got favorable seasonality aspects as well. And it absolutely plays to one of Europe's big strengths, which is cultural tourism. I mean, most Americans are not coming to Europe for a beach holiday. They're coming to Europe to visit its cultural sites. And but one observation is that it's still quite similar business than it was in 2019. So thinking about the positive factors you were talking about, like length of stay, I'm wondering if you're picking up, and maybe you're going to say, you tell me, because you're the private sector, but do we think the sort of work you're doing is going to stimulate product development and sales change, in the sense that you might be encouraging people to stay for longer, but perhaps travel less often if the travel component is higher in carbon? And can that sort of calculation get incorporated in the metrics you're talking about? So if I'm sitting in the United States and I'm looking at how I'm perceived as, am I desirable, less desirable? I'm fairly confident that I'm, bringing guests that are appreciative, that spend good money. But, how, if I'm sitting in California, do I look like good business for a destination that is really trying to spend its promotional money wisely? So can I sort of put that back to you, that little thought experiment?
Totally. Okay. And nobody is going to stop marketing to the US market, right? It makes sense. But we need to be wise as to how we market them, what we market them for, and what we're trying to sell to them. Are we selling to them as first-time visitors, or are we selling to them as repeat visitors? Are we selling them the products that other alternative markets could be buying, or are we selling them products that only they could be buying? Are we aware of how they can combine with other markets and how compatible they are with other supply and demand issues? Or are we prioritizing them? And sometimes there's an opportunity cost from doing other things. Something that's worth considering is we're actually not very good at being innovative. We love the word, but we don't know how to do it. And a lot of the sustainability work that we do is actually to not innovate, right? Reducing energy, water, and waste is a way of maintaining business as usual, keeping the same kind of hotels we have always had, the same kind of experiences, just doing it with lower costs. Cost reduction cannot be a long-term strategy. You can only go so far with cost reduction as your business strategy. At some point, you need to look at innovation. And if you look at cost savings as a way of just reducing operating costs, not as a way of creating a budget for innovation, you don't have a business plan for very long.
That's clear, and it's a challenge to product developers in long-haul source markets. And I think from our perspective, and looking ahead to some other activity we're doing later this year, April 8th and 9th in London, we have our Destinations Exchange Europe, where we're really inviting people to look at 2025-26 in terms of what are you selling and what are you offering and how will things change. And I think your point that efficiency is just what business should do, and don't expect to be patted on the back by your clients. Maybe it looks like good management, that's welcome. Maybe you've got metrics which show that you're making incremental improvements on your environmental footprint, that's also welcome. But I think your critical point that it's about designing experiences which have a positive impact, as well as mitigating the negative impact. But it's, this is a value-adding industry, and we shouldn't forget that, and we should locate that value around sustainability in the first place, and that will be a self-fulfilling sort of virtuous circle, if I've understood you right.
Absolutely.
I think we're close to the end of our running time today. There's a lot we could discuss, but I think, Virginia, do you have any last reflections from you on the what you've heard, thinking about it from that hotel ecosystem perspective? Are they also looking at their segmentation in terms of origin market? Are they actively promoting in certain ways? Because part of their job is to optimize capacity. They want to fill those rooms. So to what extent does sustainability and commercial considerations link up from your perspective?
From our perspective, it depends on the kind of accommodation. We have a lot of accommodations certified with Bioscore. They are big. We have another that have a lot of budget and can do it very well, but in general they need tools and help to guide them in sustainability management. you know, and right now they are focusing the management, and I don't think they are not focused in the perspective of the commercial way or the innovation way. They are working on it, working on the sustainable management, and they are not thinking in other things. So it's very difficult sometimes for the accommodations. It's very important that they focus on it, and they are going to see that his commercial position is going to improve, and his position in some search engines or pages like booking.com or something like that are going to increase. But they are right now in a basic place, thinking about sustainable management. I think they are not thinking big about doing another strategy or things like that.
Thank you. Well, I think we are now at the end of our time, and what I'm taking away is the challenge is to really take an innovative approach to incorporating sustainability, both from a destination perspective, but particularly from a private sector perspective, which will need collaboration with destinations who are supporting their ecosystems in their own transition. But there's a lot for the private sector to do in order that the offer in a few years' time does look substantially different than it does now. We're here to help support that, but we're extremely grateful to the experts we've had today to show us what's out there in practice, helping enable that transition. So Virginia and Xavier, thank you very much indeed for your time. Looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.